Ladies and gentlemen, they brought back Jim Crow.
There passed a new congressional map that could help Republicans win all 9 congressional seats in this year's midterm elections. Prior to the vote, protesters gathered outside the state's House and Senate chambers to voice their anger at the plan. The new map slices up Memphis, a majority black city that makes up most of the state's lone Democratic stronghold. Tennessee's governor has now signed the bill, making it the first state to adopt a new map since a U.S. Supreme Court ruling last week that significantly weakened the landmark Voting Rights Act.
Now, you may not think it's as drastic as Jim Crow right now. I understand. I grasp it. You're not hearing about it in global news about how a bunch of black people aren't allowed to drink from water fountains, or they have specifically segregated specific things. But they basically reenacted Jim Crow. And I'm going to show you how, because Tennessee Republicans just redrew some maps. Tennessee Republicans redraw maps to erase last Democratic black majority district. Now, it's official, by the way. This is exactly what's happening. This move comes days after the Supreme Court ruling weakened Voting Rights Act protections against racial gerrymandering. Now, all these words probably don't mean a lot to you. I'm going to break this down as I read through part of this article that's been blocked by me. Oh, never mind. Here it goes. Tennessee Republicans dominated legislation passed redistricting maps on Thursday, eliminating the state's one Democratic black majority congressional district a week after the U.S. court effectively gutted a major section of the Voting Rights Act. Now, this is basically protecting voters and making sure that black people can vote effectively and women can vote and you can vote. This is very horrifying because this is getting rid of your voting rights and effectively. The move cracks Tennessee's 9th congressional district, which covers Memphis, into 3 pieces, each of which contains exactly a third of the city's black voters. The new maps mean that all 9 of Tennessee's congressional districts are Republican leaning. So that means, and I'd like to point this out if I so desperately could. I want you to imagine this. Imagine if you have 100 people and you separate them into a bunch of districts. Let me do this better, actually. Let me make this easier for you. So let's go back to 100 voters, right? 40 people are blue and 60 people vote red. Normally, the blue voters would probably win a few districts and get a few representatives because they still make up a huge chunk of the population. But with gerrymandering, the people drawing the maps can slice neighborhoods apart in weird shapes so that those 40 blue voters get spread thin across many districts instead of being grouped together. That way, the red party wins almost every district, even if millions of people voted against them. This is what people are angry about in Tennessee. Memphis has a large black population and usually votes Democratic. Instead of keeping Memphis mostly together, lawmakers split them into multiple districts attached to huge Republican rural areas. That is weakening voting power overall. And here goes the thing, right? Tennessee is mostly Republican anyway. Both parties gerrymander in different states. They are legally allowed to draw maps, but it makes urban voters lose political power, and the maps were designed specifically to reduce black and Democratic representation. That's specifically what they're doing. The district has closely occupied the southwest corner of the state. Now 3 districts snake out from Memphis' densest corner, with 2 crossing the Tennessee River to reach Nashville's suburbs 200 miles away. If Republican policies are so great, why are they changing the lines to rig elections? Asked Vincent Dixie, a state representative from Nashville, during debate on Thursday, pleading for Republicans to refrain. Where is your humanity in this? As Democratic lawmakers spoke, the House Speaker directed state troopers to remove a section of the audience in the gallery, which had begun shouting, "This is bad. This is bad." Justin Jones, a state Democratic representative, described Cameron Sexton, the Tennessee House Speaker, as the Grand Wizard in Chief. Grand Wizard is a title in the KKK, by the way, and handed a Republican lawmaker a Confederate flag. John offered amendments to the bill, which the Speaker ruled has been submitted in an untimely manner. Johns described it as a Jim Crow process. The redistricting comes 8 days after the Supreme Court's landmark Callius versus Landry decision, which invalidated swaths of the Voting Rights Act, which have restrained state governments from drawing congressional districts that left black voters at a political disadvantage. Despite demanding from Trump for conservative states to conduct mid-decade redistricting, Tennessee had refrained from taking action before the court's ruling. But Sexton said the redraw will ensure the state's representation and the Washington reflects its conservative values. So they're basically admitting that they're just doing this Trump defeated Kamala Harris in Tennessee by 64-34 in the 2024 U.S. presidential election. 1/3 of Tennessee voters cast a ballot for a Democratic congressional representative in 2024. Republicans hold 8 of the state's 9 congressional seats. Testifying before a committee's hearing in Tennessee on Wednesday, the voting rights activist Stacey Abrams said that the state's General Assembly had been asked to dismantle the protections that helped bury the abomination of Jim Crow. Democracy is in action, one that says I will share my power with those I disagree with because it is the only way to guarantee our common future, said Abrams. Backsliding into authoritarianism where one party and one race holds dominion is unworthy of the volunteer state, whether by consequence or intention. It is wrong. It is unworthy of a nation that revolted when power was held by a few, a truth we celebrate 250 years hence. This is a horrifying article in totality. It's just them denying everything that happened in the past. It's terrifying. And then Tennessee Republicans said all this nonsense and garbage because they passed the out. It's just really bad. Everything is bad right now. So yes, we have brought back effectively Jim Crow back into common day voting as it stands right now. And this is so scary. It's so scary because they want to just take away black power. And you may not understand what the redrawing of maps does. Hopefully I explained it as simple as I possibly could. I just want you to imagine this, right? Just picture this. Imagine that if there was like 50 people, right? And 20 of the 50 people, there was 10 districts, and 20 of the 50 people were like, okay, you guys get 3 districts, we get 2. And then the people that say, okay, we're cool with our 2 districts, you have your 3. So they say, okay, 20 people voted this, 10 people, boom, boom, boom. And then they redrew the maps to make it so those 20 people, 2 of them were in every group instead of being in the 10. They were just random. They just put them in random groups. They redrew the map. This was so malicious and weird. It's such a weird thing to do. I think people are going to get uncomfortable with the title of this video when you compare modern voting manipulation to Jim Crow laws. But because they imagine you are saying it is literally identical. The exact same laws, the same violence, the same signs hanging over movie theaters. No. You're missing the point entirely. The comparison is the result starts feeling hauntingly similar to many people. A system where black people's communities technically have the right to vote. Yes, political structures are arranged in ways that weaken how these votes can actually change power. That's what's happening. That's what's going on here. This is what's happening. I think the methods evolved with the times. That's all that's happening. The language became more sanitized. The paperwork became cleaner. And I can hear people now saying, we're just getting rid of everything DEI. Do you know what DEI means? Are you just saying that because you think it means black people get benefits? No, DEI is diversity, inclusion. It's oh my god, DEI was put in place so people would not be racist. That's why DEI exists, so people wouldn't be racist. If you take away DEI, people get to be racist systematically. That's why we push so hard for DEI, because for so long in this country, black people and immigrants and all the people that came over were treated like garbage, and Jim Crow existed. DEI is a direct reaction to Jim Crow. Do you understand that? Do you know that DEI is the opposite of Jim Crow? Do I need to spell it out for you? That's what it is. This sanitized language, this emotional outcome that feels disturbingly recognizable to me. And the simplest explanation is, and I just want to keep saying it simply. Imagine you have a group of people who usually vote one way. Instead of letting them stay together in one district where they could elect someone representing their community, politicians slice that community apart into multiple districts filled with voters who overpower them. Obviously, their vote still exists, but their vote doesn't matter. Their ability to influence representation gets watered down until it matters barely, ever so barely. That's why people call it vote dilution. Your vote counts individually. Your community loses power collectively. And your computer's going to lose power too, and they're going to hack your system and mess you up. Individual counting without collective power is a trick. Like, you think like, oh, every vote matters. Yes, if you're in the community, that's what's happening. When this keeps happening to heavily black areas specifically, especially in southern states with histories tied to racial voter suppression. People are obviously going to see echoes of older systems. Politicians hate hearing that comparison. History leaves scars on places. Tennessee does not exist in a vacuum disconnected from the past. Memphis being divided apart politically carries emotional weight because black voting rights in the South were fought for with literal blood, jail time, intimidation, and death. You cannot separate modern map fights from that history. They did not appear out of thin air yesterday morning. They did not fall from the sky. People drew them, people with agendas, people who understood exactly what they were doing. Now, Jim Crow was very blunt. It told black people directly that they were not welcome in power. It was just, yeah, hey, this water fountain, you drink it. Now, you may think Jim Crow was hundreds of years ago, but Jim Crow was like 60, 70 years ago, man. It was not that long ago. Modern systems are far more polished because modern America understands openly racist laws look horrible internationally and domestically. So the argument critics make is that suppression evolved. And that's fair. Is suppression deeply involved? Something more bureaucratic and legally defensible. Not, well, you can vote, right? You can vote. You technically can vote, right? You have the ability to vote. Your vote will be arranged in a way that weakens your collective influence. It's not exclusion through doors being locked. They're using my least favorite mathematical thing, geometry. The most evil math on earth. They're using geometry and district lines and legal technicalities and political engineering. And the door is closed. It's still closed. It's just the closed door has just a nicer frame now. The nice frame makes people hesitate to call it what it is. But you have a key to the door. No, I have a key to the left door, not the middle door. Yeah, but the middle door is so nice. Weird. Nice door, huh? Nice door. This is so... I hate how obvious the strategy is. Cities with large black populations or Democratic voting blocks repeatedly get split apart into strange-shaped districts connected to massive rural Republican areas. And this is just before the midterms, so it's even more malicious. It's disgusting. It's nasty. It's so wicked. Politicians turn around and act confused when people accuse them of intentionally reducing minority representation. What do you mean? It's not like they can't vote. These blacks have the ability to cast their votes same as me. If they had more black people, how about they get the monkeys and baboons and chimps from Africa to help them vote? I'm not a racist, I'm just calling it what it is. If you don't like it, leave my country. That's basically what they're saying. There's nothing else you're saying. That's basically what's happening. It's you have the freedom of speech and the freedom to get bullied. That's what happens. Maybe if you had systemic power, you'd use it the same way we do. This is what people mean when they say that you are getting systematically oppressed. This is why racism is not like equal. This is what they mean. People are naturally going to question whether democracy itself is being manipulated when you have to redraw the maps just to get what you want. It is so strange. The performance is so insulting to me. It's so insulting. It's so insulting, right? It's just nasty. I keep hearing the both parties gerrymander stuff. I stated that earlier. Yes. Both parties absolutely manipulate maps in different states. That does not magically erase criticism when it happens. I mean, like, yeah, okay, you can say both sides have it, but right now, look what's happening, right? Saying everybody does something shady does not transform it into more behavior. Well, you did it too. Yeah, they're hypocrites. What if two people rig a game differently? The game is still rigged. I don't know what you're trying to say to me. The audience does not care which rigger is which, right? That doesn't matter. The audience cares that the game is fixed. For many black Americans especially, hearing politicians casually discuss slicing apart their communities for electoral advantage is such a strategy. It's crazy, right? It's not even... Back in the day, they would wear, KKK slander, right? They would hear KKK slander. That's what it'd be. That's what it would be. But no, it's not that anymore. It's not KKK. They're wearing a suit. They have a calm voice. They're not out there with white hoods tossing flames at people. They're not doing that. That's what it is. And I think the most dangerous part is how slowly this is going to erode trust in democracy itself. Once people begin feeling like politicians choose voters instead of voters choosing politicians, why would you participate? Right? I want to do an aside of a story real fast if I could. So I was not that politically inclined when I was growing up. My mother had told me all the horrifying stuff she went through during 9/11. She dropped her entire being Muslim in totality. My father had told me the racism he experienced growing up, and I'd heard from my grandmother all the horrifying stuff that she had went through from my dad's side, how the evil she went through. She is 71 years old. She saw a lot of the nonsense going on. So this is what I grew up with. This is the evils that happened to me. No, she's 81 now. 81. She's 81 years old now. My dad's 61. So this is the evils that happened in the life hold of what we witnessed. This is all bad, all evil, right? So this is important to me. This is very important. When I was hearing this stuff, I had thought that politics was for white people. That's it, right? The only reason I even cared about politics even slightly was that Barack Obama became president. And I said, oh, that's cool. We finally got a black guy in office. Oh, he's the president. Whoa, that's cool. And that was the end of me learning anything about politics, because the more I learned about politics, it made me more depressed. And then I had learned that the Democrats were manipulating people. I had learned that the Republicans were manipulating black people. And then all I heard from black people was, oh man, I don't care about politics, man. They all saw the same systematically. They messing us up. Because I grew up in the hood. That's where I grew up. I grew up on the east side of Detroit, and I grew up on the north side of Toledo, man. I grew up in the hood. I didn't grow up around people that invoked in me a reason to care about politics. I just grew up in a shitty neighborhood. I did shitty black people stuff. That's all I did, right? That was my entire childhood. So, and now, when I was 2016, I was 20 years old in 2016. I got into politics a little bit, and I chose wrong completely because I didn't listen to anybody. I was like, man, all this stuff seems stupid. I don't care about none of this stuff. I just tried to do my own stuff, do my own research, trying to figure out what was the correct thing to do. And I messed up. I messed up stupidly. And I defended the wrong team. I didn't know what was going on. Democrats were being performatively racist, and then Republicans were just being racist. And I was like, I think I'd rather trust the real racists. Maybe they changed. I don't know. Maybe it was like a platform shift back in the day. And I was defending the wrong side for like 2 years until bad things started happening. And I was like, man, this is really bad. Who did this? I did. It was me. I messed up. Oh my goodness. And then I did all this work. I did all this campaigning. I was out in local fields, making sure to amend my mistakes. I was doing so much work to grow and make sure that I wasn't an idiot like I was before, doing like actual definitive research. It was so much work. And now that I'm into politics and learning so much about this and voting in my local elections and voting for my local mayors and participating in community outreach programs and helping community centers build and working with the community to go out and campaigning and getting people to register for voting and doing all this stuff, I'm discovering how pointless it feels for a lot of people, because they all just feel depressed when stuff like this happens. When moments like this happen, people get really, really, really depressed. They get really sad. They don't think, well, my vote makes a change and I can actually do something. They think, what's the point? What is the point of doing any of this if every time I try to make a change, they do something systemically to ruin it for people trying to do something? So you spend all this time researching, voting, getting all these people to do stuff, and it doesn't matter because you were focusing on your community, which you knew for a long time was mostly Democrat. You just to make sure they got out to vote. But then they redraw the map. So now you have these other people who are inherently racist. And I don't mean that the fact they're white, they're racist. I mean, that's what they grew up around. They grew up thinking that black people were privileged and had all these free benefits and they got welfare and they're ghetto and ignorant and ornery, and you're approaching them already angry because they think you're worthless monkeys. So now you have to be the bigger person all the time for no benefit to yourself. You don't get a benefit for being the bigger person. You just get basic human decency. And it's so hard to fight just for regular voting rights, just to exist. And now people can't even fight for regular voting rights because we're too cynical. We're just too cynical because we know it's pointless, because they do stuff that I didn't read about, that I didn't know about. They just keep doing things that further divide people in ways that make it ignorant and selfish and ridiculous to even consider voting. And it feels nasty. It feels nasty overall to have all these things happen and coalesce into a big point to where everything feels pointless and ignorant, and it feels like a nihilistic approach, and it destroys your optimism where you just say, screw it. Why would I vote if it doesn't matter? And they're depending on that. They're depending on me doing this nihilistic approach. But don't fall for it. Cynicism grows. Anger grows. Communities stop believing the system genuinely reflects them. That emotional collapse matters because democracies survive on public trust more than paper rules. The rules only work when people believe they are fair. When people believe the map was designed before the election starts, well, voting is ceremonial. I got to vote. I got a pen. I got a sticker. I voted. I voted. Invoking Jim Crow comparisons is the only way I could possibly make you understand. Some people say this feels too strong. It's not Jim Crow. Listen, they're not always claiming it is literally the same system copied word for word from the 1950s. They are saying the spirit of political power being structured away from black communities still feels alive in newer forms, cleaner forms, legal forms, algorithmic forms. Oppression adapts to the era it existed in and exists in right now. History has a terrifying habit of reappearing dressed in whatever language the current generation finds acceptable. Obviously, it's the same thing, right? The clothes change, but the face behind the clothes do not. The face is the problem. The people drawing these maps are not wearing white hoods and screaming in the streets. Like I said before, you don't see grand wizards and grand cyclopses and rooks. Those are the names of the KKK followings, by the way. I learned this deeply. They are wearing suits. They are attending meetings. They are testifying before committees with straight faces and prepared statements. They are using words like communities of interest and compactness and population equality. This technical language, but the intent is to win. Winning at the expense of representation is still winning. The winners call it strategy. The losers call it suppression. The winners control the language. The language controls the conversation. The conversation avoids the word that fits. The architecture of power in America has always been contested. Every generation fights over the same question. Who gets to be represented? Who draws the lines? Who decides who voice counts? Who decides that? The answer has never been fair. The fairness has always been something people had to fight for. Women's rights, women's suffrage, gay marriage in general, just gay marriage in general, black people existing as a concept overall. That's what it is. The fighting is not over. The fighting will never be over because the people who benefit from unfair lines will never give them up voluntarily. They will call the fight partisan. They will call it political. They will call it anything except what it is. A struggle over whether democracy means what it says, or whether democracy is just a word that powerful people use to justify whatever they wanted to do anyway. I am tired. Look at my eyes, fellas. You can tell that I'm tired, sleepy, and all exhausted, but I'm actually wide awake right now. The tiredness reflected on my face is just my face. It is a physical representation of the emotional, mental state, and spiritual state that I exist in every single moment of every single day that I am alive. This is just what it is. I don't get to decide this, and you get to decide. You get to choose. You get to vote. I need you. I need you. I need you to vote. I need you, even after they redraw the lines, even after they tell you it's worthless. If you feel any sense of white guilt in any capacity, please, I beg of you to vote Democrat. Please, I am begging with my whole chest, mind, spirit, body, and soul. I need you to make sure these midterms do not go haywire and disgusting because they are trying to rig it right in front of our faces. I know information gets transferred in a heartbeat and people don't pay attention to the words of most people, and you're probably watching this at 2x speed. That's why I'm trying to make it speak faster so you slow down the video. So yes, I understand that, but please do your best. With that being said, have a lovely day or night wherever you're at, and I'm out. Peace. Bye.
I'm your Nick and Night, be my Laurel Ooh, happy to try what you need. Your world, I love to live in it. Ooh, I love the ride when you're free.